challenges from councillors Bull or Cheshire, so let's wait and see if they turn up. Welcome all to this meeting of the Estates Committee, the first of the new council. The first agenda item is representatives of interested parties, and
That's not.
is it?
Is it?
Yes.
Oh, you're right, I apologise. I'll be quiet.
What?
Back to you, Chairman.
Yeah. Looks like Liz is just about to turn up, by the way.
I think it appears twice, that's what I was saying.
Yeah, I was a bit sort of confused by that, but let's not go on about it. Don't worry, we're just starting, and the first agenda item, therefore, official agenda item, is 2501, election of chair of committee. I think there were some nominations by email in advance of the meeting, although technically nominations by emails don't count for anything. Do we have any nominations?
I nominate Max Shearer. I propose Max Shearer as chairman.
I second Max Shearer as chairman.
Any other nominations?
Seeing none.
Okay, so the question is, am I prepared to stand again as chair? I think the answer is yes. I don't like to say that there are conditions, but in agreeing to be chair again, I do want to make certain changes to the way this committee is run that I hinted at the last meeting of this committee, which is I do think if I sit down with Lisa together, we can find a better way of both tracking what we do, having a clear plan about the future of what we want to do, and how that intersects with the agenda. Because as I mentioned at the last meeting, we almost seem to have three different systems working simultaneously. A spreadsheet about ongoing things, the actual agenda, and the very useful report that Lisa also prepares month by month that supplements the agenda, but it's never always clear how it interacts with the agenda. And there's actually also a fourth dimension to it, which we shouldn't lose sight of, because at the end of last year's tours around the estate, I drew up a list, which this committee agreed, which was a series of what we needed to do in what is now the last year and what could be carried over to this year with budgetary issues associated with it. So the point is we have lots of different devices, and I wonder that we just sometimes get mixed in the middle. Anyway, sorry, that's an acceptance speech saying that I would accept, but be prepared that I do want to make changes. And I think, Lisa's quite happy with these. I don't think there's any resistance from her. It's about trying to make the whole thing a lot more efficient and workable for everybody. So thank you. Sorry.
Yeah. No, can I just say, I think anything that makes us more efficient is better, and we wholeheartedly support that. So more power.
And we're going to agree focus for the next year or two or three. We could to have an agenda which concentrates on that as a.
So let's move on then to the next agenda item, which is election of a deputy chair of the committee. Again, we've not had any nominations. Would anybody wish to make a nomination? Councillor Clark.
I will nominate Councillor Arnold.
I think he has, I know he's not here tonight, I think he has indicated that if he were to be nominated, he'd be happy with that. And on that basis, I am prepared to second that. Any other nominations? In which case, all those in favour of electing Councillor Arnold as the deputy, thank you very much. So then the next item is to receive the terms of reference to recommendation for the next full council meeting. They have been circulated. I am just about to try and find them. Why can't I find them? Terms of reference, there we go. I have a couple of issues I just want to raise, but I'm first of all going to ask anybody around the table whether they wish to. Councillor Wade.
Yeah, I think it would be useful to look at the budget allowance that you've got. I think £3,000 is quite small given the amount of money the States is responsible for. And I also think that having to come to full council for smaller spends, relatively smaller spends, delays the process. So I'd like to propose an increase, a straightaway increase to either 5 or my preference is £7,500. Given that today's attendance, if we include the 2 non-attendees as well, that's practically half of the council. And if we're making, as an estates committee, decisions which we then have to go 2 weeks later to council, or 6 weeks later, if there's a delay in receiving quotes, it just puts back action. And I think we need to see faster action. So my preference is 7.5. That might be too big a jump for some people because we're quite a conservative bunch of people, but we should increase it from 3. And so a minimum of 5 would be my request. 7.5 would be my recommendation.
Anybody want to add any other comments or reflect on that?
So yes, that was my point as well. I think my experience last year had been pinging back to full council quite a few small spend items that do agree. That was my point to raise. Where that threshold is, I'm not entirely sure. I think it's worth looking at the number of items that were approved last year to understand where the roadblocks were. It seems reasonable to push beyond 5, I would say. The other point would be final bullet points around the 3 to 5 year plan of activity. Does that sit distinctly to those other documents you were mentioning, or is that part and parcel of that? I just worry there's another 3 to 5 year plan, and there's the working current plan, and there's the budget.
I think it's part and parcel of it to try and answer your question. I think Liz had a.
Yeah, I was just.
Sorry, is it a direct response to that?
It was, yeah.
Oh, okay.
No.
Council should have a 3-year finance plan, and one of the things I've asked the state to do, and it would be great if we could do it this year, is to have a 3-year plan for property maintenance or development or whatever, costed to the extent that it can be. And, even if we put in rough costs of, say, 10, like between 5 and 15, 10 is a better budget than no budget at all. And it's a requirement of us as a council that we have a 3-year financial plan. We can't have that 3-year financial plan without the state putting something forward, because you're the biggest expense we've got. And other than the precept, the biggest income we have. So we need to have that plan.
So Liz, and then I'll.
I was just going to back up that the frustration last year, I think, was how slow everything takes because we have to go back to the full council. So I think there was a good argument to raise that.
Okay, well, I started, and as I said, I had a couple of points. In fact, they're all around the same issues. I think 3,000 based on last year is too small, and I'd recommend that we push that up. We cannot decide what we push it up to, but we would need to make a recommendation to full council. We've heard already suggesting going up to 7.5, what you say? I was actually going to suggest 5, but I'm actually going to pause slightly. I'm trying to think, Lisa, how many things that we had over 5 that we needed to refer, or well, that we had a number over 3 of which caused delays.
Yeah.
But I'm just trying to think where a kind of break point is, if you see what I mean, based on last year's experiences, John.
Why don't you do what Rob suggested, which is the right idea, not just guess, but have a look over the last 18 months at every time the states came back and categorise where is the spend, and then
Yeah.
choose the sweet spot that allows proper decisions. And that, I think, would be a more objective proposal to council, where we can say, we had 35 occasions to go to council, 30 of them were for less than £7,500. We could spend less time in council and give the states more priority.
So we're going to raise it, and we'll base it on a recommendation after Lisa has looked at the last 18 months. The other thing I was just going to mention is that, again, some of you will remember that last year I did draw up a work plan with a budget of things that we felt was needed for the estate. Looking at the current year's budget, I kind of think the Finance and General Purpose Committee, did they not see it, or was it just ignored? Because why did I do that? And then it's not reflected in the budget.
I think I haven't got the figure in front of me, but I think the assumption was some of those would go through last year and haven't, but then that money will roll over to this year. So no extra allowance was made this year on top of what we already had. But again, that's in the figures. I can't guarantee.
Because looking at the documents, the general estates document that Lisa prepares, the budget's already, are going to be spent, within a few weeks.
Which items are we talking about?
It's one of them, the line painting, in the drill hall.
But then okay, didn't we have 10,000 last year predicated against car parks?
The general one.
Mm.
That's disappeared now from this year's budget.
Yeah.
But that's because we didn't spend it last year. But it's gone into reserves, hasn't it?
Well, we spent some of it, didn't we? Because wasn't it the wall taken out of that?
Let's have this discussion some other time. All I'm saying, in terms of this agenda item, what we're recommending is that we're going to ask for a change of the limit that we can spend, but I think there's also a general query that we need to ensure that us setting budgets related to estates businesses are properly considered by Finance and General Purposes. That's all I'm saying.
And aren't shaved off.
We need to
future
perhaps make
discussions,
sure
'cause I think that's the impression I get, that it's, and then when it's talked about before it's finalised, obviously we're looking for places, or Emma and Paul, whoever, are looking for places to save money. And it ends up getting forgotten and shaved off.
We just need to, keep an eye on that to make sure that the two work better together. John?
I would be happy to take that on myself and compare what the finance team looked at and approved, and then full council approved, against the budget figures that you mentioned, Max. My recollection is that there was very strong lobbying for a lot of money to be spent on estates, both out of operational income and out of reserves. And we've got high levels of reserves, and part of what we said last year was that we could take a lot of money out of reserves to spend on the estates. That's my recollection. But the better thing to do, I think, would be to compare the two, and I'm happy to take that on as an action.
Okay. Ian, and then let's move on.
That's also why UMAX are on the finance committee, to push those things through. So I think that's exactly, if we look back at the recording, that's exactly what was decided, that everything that we considered was either going to happen last year or would be pushed through to this year. And that would be delivered, but there was no extra predicated money because we already had it covered.
Okay. Right. Thank you for all of those comments. Let's move on to the next agenda item, which is apologies for absence. We've had apologies from Councillor Arnold, Councillor Cheshire isn't here, although I don't think we've had any apologies from her as such. But we note her absence. In which case, the next agenda item is declarations of interest, to receive and consider any declaration of interest from members under section 50 of the Local Government Act 2000. Firstly, to declare any disclosable pecuniary interests. None. And secondly, to declare any other interests.
I work for Anvil School, which comes up in the marketplace.
It does indeed. Okay, thank you. That is noted. I mentioned this before because for some reason I think there's a cut and paste error on the agenda, but the next agenda item is representatives from interested parties.
I'll just say it's not a cut and paste error, that's the explanation to the general public of what representations from interested parties is, and then where it appears on the agenda is the actual agenda item. So that's that's the layout.
Oh, sorry, that's I don't know why I never even realised that.
I know it sounds like it's repeated, but that for somebody who doesn't understand, that's the description of what that point is.
Yes, sorry, you're absolutely right.
How the layout has been.
You're absolutely right, and you absolutely you've corrected me accordingly. So minutes of the previous meeting. Let's just do those, and then we will go on to something that our gentleman's been waiting very patiently for. So minutes of the previous meeting. This is the meeting house held on the 1st of April. No, it wasn't a joke. It really was on the 1st of April.
Up to 12 o'clock.
Yeah, I know. It seems quite a long way away now. Just so you are aware, people who are present, Councillor Ball, Cheshire, Fordham and myself. So particularly the two who were present, you happy to accept those? Yes, was someone prepared to propose those as Liz, seconded by Councillor Rob Fordham, and let's move on. We accept that. So, you stopped me just as I came in. So we have somebody who's been very patiently waiting for an agenda item that we're going to move up, which is to do, it's on the agenda to do with Bassett Place. So I'm trying to find out where it is on the agenda. It's right at the bottom here. So we're moving that up for you, sir. You've been promoted around about 17 odd agenda places. Now, you will have seen this, hopefully there are papers in relation to it. This is to do with the lighting in Bassett Place. It has a long history to it. You will have seen by one of the agenda items that apparently the Estates Committee agreed some 3 to 4 years ago to try and help out with this. We now have a quote from Sadler's, which I saw in the pack earlier today. I'm just unlocking my computer so I can find it. And there are also various photographs which Lisa was showing you. There is the quote. A sum of 32170 plus VAT, so you can see it's going to be around about £400, just short of £400. So we go 386 in total. I don't know whether you would like to say anything more about the context of this very briefly, sir, or?
Yes, for the record, Francis Rowland Scotney. I've lived in Bassett Place since February '66. We've always had a street light My view is that with the council moving around and changing offices and yourselves, it's got lost. The council always maintained it. The council did put this light up 4 years ago. It failed. It was a bit of a nuisance. It was flashing on and off 24 hours a day. Spoke to Lisa and finally, when they got round to it, sorted it, they agreed to put one in, but they talk about adoption. I was thinking, well, they've had a street light from a young lady that lived up on Herne Road. She retires this August and she can't remember when it wasn't there over her back garden. So as residents, 14 of us benefit from that light. The one that is there, the nearest house to it, you can actually come out of the house and lock the door without disturbing the light. You walk right up the road in the dark before it comes on. We have, I'm not checking, elderly ladies up there, widows. It's a bit daunting in the winter when they come up. And we all feel that it's not the residents' responsibility, it's yourselves. I could name a few town clerks that we've always contacted and then it was maintained. And it is now, yes, with advancing years, it's not good. We appreciate it's a private road, but the history suggests that I think you've had it too long to consider adopting it. I think it's always been yours. And thank you for listening to us. And I shall.
Okay, thank you very much for that. So, councillors, you've heard the case, you've seen the quotes. Would anybody like to make any comments? Councillor Clark.
I'm not passing judgment one way or the other, but I've looked back at all the various documents that I can find. I can see letters written in 2017 and 2018.
Yes, I'm not good at dates, but you'll be around that time.
Yeah. Where the council, Oundle Town Council said it wasn't their responsibility. That light was from circa 2016. Do we have any documentation about it?
Not that light, no. Did that one stop working, Rowley, that old
Yeah,
one?
I think that light is the cause of all this. It worked so many years without fog. And, we are interested in this new computer system, and they say that post isn't there, and we've actually sent them photographs of it.
Who are they, sorry, Northants?
No, the computer companies, it just, I understand now, and I've checked it, all your street lights have got a number on.
Mm-hmm.
When they went round numbering the street lights, nobody walked up the yard and numbered that one.
But when you say all the streets have streetlights,
Yes.
we've only got 4 streetlights. All of the ones on the main streets are Balfour Beatty,
Yeah.
which are the old Northamptonshire County Council lights. And they're the ones that are on their website. And as you say, Bassett Place is not a dotted road.
That would be Urban District Council.
That's right, so pre-1974. And lots of our assets got moved in 1974. I've gone through the minutes of the meetings. I remember we discussed it a number of times, late 22, early 23. It also sits on our asset register, but we replaced it in or around November 2022. Though I can't find anything in the minutes about it, but we remember talking to
It did go to full council, I think, it was funded about like it.
And when I watched the recordings, which I haven't had time to do, I seem to recall us saying that we'd replaced that as a one-off. And again, I'm not passing judgment one way or the other, but that was the end of our liability because it's not not our road, not a public road. So I don't know where that leaves us, but clearly, if that was before 1974, that could well be where the problem comes from. And now if we will work out the future.
A very useful summary, Ian, thank you. John?
If we were to replace it, it would have to be connected to the mains electricity supply, and somebody would have to pay for its upkeep.
That's the
Are
other
you
thing we
suggesting
can't
that would be
find out.
us? Sorry?
But that's another thing we can't find out, who was paying for that before. Nobody seems to know, and I think from memory, hasn't Emma contacted Balfour Beatty? I'm sure she tried
Possibly,
to.
it's not on their site. But it's very similar to the lines in Danfords, which
Yes, I think so.
electricity comes through from somewhere, but
Nobody knows who's paying for it, yeah.
Which is bizarre, because if we put it in there, Sadler's would need to connect it to
Yeah.
the mains electricity supply.
I think the one,
Somebody pays for it.
I think
Is
the
it
one
us?
at the moment is a photo cell, isn't it, Rowley? It's not a photo cell, isn't it? It's,
photovoltaic solar.
yeah.
So that would determine it being switched on, but it doesn't determine who pays.
Yeah.
So that's my question.
If one you might find interesting, in the early years, I can seem to remember one of the clerks telling me that Oundle Town Council had 4. There's one Bassett Place, there's one, not Hinkham on the other side, goes through an arch, house its side of an archway, no?
Danfords.
Danfords.
Yeah, they are.
One in there, I contacted the lady in there and she said, yes, they did do it. I asked them to switch it off because it annoyed me and there was some bungalows at the back and there was some there. I rather think the third one might have been off North Street. The fourth one, I don't know, but they're certainly, I appreciate the movement, but certainly they're historic parts of the town. As you know, we're now in a conservation area.
Liz, and then I'll try and sum up.
Yeah, have Balfour Beatty actually checked the line? Has anybody checked it? Because Danfords, in the end, I have to say, residents sorted it themselves. But there wasn't actually a problem. It was the centre on the top, something needed replacing on it.
Right.
And there was power to it, even though they said there wasn't. You had so many people that came out, it was quite amusing in the end. But
Did they manage to get Balfour Beatty out to the one in
No.
Danfords?
No,
Because you
That's
normally
a
get the
separate-
that's a
response.
separate
It's
issue,
not
but
out.
what I'm saying is it's the same style, isn't it, of light? So I just wondered, has Balfour Beatty, has anybody or Sattlers just checked that?
Well, Sadler's have been out the 3 times that they've replaced and for this quote they've been out and
Okay, so there is power going to it.
oh yeah, there must be, because that one was a wider one.
Okay, and who owns the pole?
Again, we don't know, there's no information.
It looks like it's.
Okay, let me try and sum up.
Officially, I don't think it's there. If it helps, the arm coming off the pole it's the original, it's a 40s, 50s style arm.
Right, let me try and sum up. I think the council are clearly sympathetic to this. It's clearly been discussed with council on a number of previous occasions. And from what I can see, and also thank you for Ian for his summary as well, it looks as though this committee in the past has actually made a commitment to actually getting this fixed and replaced. The cost is a relatively modest cost, and the indication here is £30 per household, which realistically is a drop in the ocean in relation to the kind of budgets that council spend each year. So I don't think we should be in any way alarmed about the estimate that we've been given here. What concerns me, and I think this is the concern that Ian was raising to begin with, is the simple fact that we're not actually responsible for streetlights. And what we can't do is afford this to become a precedent for us maintaining street lighting throughout the town. And I think we all acknowledge that. And I think as long as this, Ian talked about how when we had previously agreed to this, it was agreed explicitly as a one-off solution. So as long as it can be carried forward on that basis and can be carried forward legally, because I have no idea who actually owns any of this stuff and whether we can actually physically play around with it at all. But I think all this committee can do is, and I'm recommending that we spend up to the amount that is budgeted here. In fact, I would even round it up to £400, even £500 if need be, to find a solution as a one-off gesture to get this sorted out. That's my proposal. John, you look at things about.
Question on the proposal before I second it, which is,
Not, we need to withdraw while it discusses.
I'm happy that you stay. It's not my call, it's the chairman's call.
Sorry, what's the question?
Would you like me to withdraw while you discuss it?
No, I don't. No, I think it's an open. You can go back and watch it on YouTube anyway. So whether you walk out the room is neither here nor there. You know, it's.
I think for me, supportive though I am, it's easy for us to say it's a one-off, but what defence will we use when somebody else comes and says, our light's not fixed, Balfour Beatty won't play, we can't find who owns the light, you've done this before. It's easy enough for us today to say it's a one-off. What defence would we use to stop us being liable in the future? You're absolutely right. We mustn't create precedent.
Yeah.
Now the gentleman, Rowley, I believe.
That's what I answered.
An answer to worse than that. What the gentleman has said is there are only 4 such lights in the town, and you've named 2 of them, one of which has already been resolved. So maybe if we found that as a defence line, I'd be very happy to support this. But we need to have a defence line so that we're not creating precedent.
Rob, and then let's move on.
Just on that point, in terms of the defence line, Ian's comment about the historical context, having already been dealt with by us as a council previously, entirely indefensible, but I think it's a helpful context. If somebody else were to come to argue that this is a one-off case.
Yeah.
Because I do agree that the risk is creating precedent in there we wouldn't normally have jurisdiction over. But the context, I think, is helpful.
Okay, so just to remind you of my proposal. My proposal is that we budget up to a maximum of £500 as a one-off basis in order to resolve this problem for the residents of Bassett Place, assuming we actually have the legal right to do so.
So you want me to get
Yes.
solicitor involved
Yes.
and check?
That's my proposal. Do I have a seconder? Rob, all those in favour? Okay. You have a decision, sir.
Thank you, sir. I hope it works.
All right, thank you. And thank you for your patience.
If I possibly have any help, anything. Yeah, you know already.
All right. Okay. So let's move back to agenda, and the next agenda item is reports. 0801 to receive the income and expenditure report for OTC's properties and open spaces. That's been circulated as a spreadsheet. Hopefully you've all had the opportunity to look at it. We are just receiving it. So it's essentially there for information. I'm just going to invite any comments on that.
I just have a comment a bit later on the car park. The car park expenditure at the bottom.
Yeah.
Is that, when car park, is that, does the drill hall come under that? Because it's got ORER, I mean, I didn't quite understand that. Right at the bottom.
Yeah, I'm just trying to find out how to open earlier on.
Oh, that's a very good idea.
Are we talking about the
It
same?
is, isn't it? 87.
Sorry?
87.
987. That's recreation.
Occupation, car parks, occupation, East Road, Jones Strong Centre.
I just wonder whether the drill hall's not on there. If it was, would that make a difference to our budget spending?
No, it should be,
It should be on
an occupation road and so that's what it is.
there. Sorry, say that again, I don't know quite.
Well, if occupation road
That's
is
not
the
the,
car park,
987. It's 980.
which goes for the detail one.
Am I on something else?
Amy's got
which one, what are you looking at?
Oh, okay.
She's gone on to the clip report
sorry.
that we highlighted.
I was just, because I was looking at this earlier, and I was interested that we didn't have money to spend on the drill hall, and then I spotted this.
I'm not quite sure what you're looking at, Liz, if I'm perfectly honest.
Yeah, so 5091 is the drill hall car park. So Liz has gone on the agenda, the right-hand word on that line has reports and estate, and that leads to a spreadsheet, which is a summary of our estates.
Yeah,
And Liz is looking at line 87 on the April page of that. And asked a question about whether the drill hall is in it.
This is
but line
881.
87 on that link is recreational ground R&M.
You've got two links on 0801,
Yeah.
is that what we're talking about? Which link are you referring
The
to?
right-hand one.
Where it says properties underlined.
The properties one. Yeah,
I wrote to Camberwell, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
We can do this afterwards.
yeah, that one there.
Yeah,
Right, so copy the budget level.
I was just intrigued, I was just interested.
Yeah, so that is 987.
Yeah,
And that's specifically two car parks. But the more detailed budget, which is always what I look at.
I've got it now, yes, okay. Yes, sorry, I was looking at the left-hand one, not the right-hand one. Car parks, so, sorry, what is the question?
Does it include the
Does
drill
it include
hall?
the drill hall? Because obviously I was just looking at the expenditure and what is left really. And
Yeah,
I just wonder why the drill hall wasn't on the list.
Because that only refers to lines 5080 and 5081, the main budget, which is the home road. The drill hall car park is 5091, 5092.
On another sheet.
And those are the budgets that were agreed for this financial year, with the assumption that last year's monies were kept aside
Yeah.
in reserves to be used to spend on the lines, all the stuff we talked about for the last 12 months, but haven't got around to doing it.
I might have to go into this.
Okay.
Right, sorry.
no, these things are important. So, we have received them, any other questions? If not, the quotes usual monthly payments for open space and open spaces update report. The open spaces update report we will clearly be looking at as we go through the agenda. Are we happy to have received the usual monthly payments report? And any questions on that? No, in which case then let's move on to receive and discuss 3 to 5 year maintenance action plan working document. This is one of the documents I referred to earlier. It's a spreadsheet that has got all sorts of tasks that should happen over the year. It doesn't always relate to the agenda. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, and it's something that, again, I want to try and incorporate much more fully into the agenda so that we can actually check whether or not things are happening when we expect them to happen. The other thing the other thing in relation to that spreadsheet is that, of course, there are no kind of budgets attached to any of it. And again, we need to particularly tease out what of those things are what you might call just running jobs that the maintenance team do, or things that are over and above the maintenance team. So again, that's part of the workload that I've given myself and Lisa to try and work through and systemize slightly more. Okay, John, it's a question.
It is a question. A lot of these tasks seem to me anyway, to be what I would call operational tasks. And I just ask, I can go back to terms of reference, is it the remit of this committee to get involved in the operational side of the council?
Yeah.
Because I don't think it is. I think the remit of any committee is to make decisions that council staff can't make and to make policy.
Yeah.
It's not to run the operations team. That's why we've got staff. So unless I'm missing something,
No,
This
this
would
is
be something
exactly
I'd
the
say-
knot that I want to try and
just
cut
get rid of
through.
it, give it to Lucy and say, this is
Because
your,
if
not
this is
us.
just simply about operational stuff to do with council staff, I'm not even sure it belongs to this committee.
No, things that have to be done, the fire alarm checks that have to be done and the lift checks, they're
And
all
and
things
that's,
that
in
have
a
to be done.
sense, partly, you and the estates team sitting down and agreeing that, month by month, if you see what I mean. It's, we're not here to micromanage. That's my point.
I agree completely.
Well, that would simplify it, right?
Yeah. So we have it, but
Repetition of information, isn't it?
precisely. So, but there's.
So I think it's quite a good thing to have as reference point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
I don't want to abandon it altogether, but what I want to do is make sure that there's not stuff on there that we do need to know about, but it's hidden on, do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
It's trying to make sure this is routine and we just allow it to get on.
Yeah.
And also, what we should be doing, again, without micromanaging, is being checked that those things actually are being done, but also use it to inform what we do need to actually make financial decisions about. Because it may be, sorry, and I don't want to prolong this too much, but it's all part of my kind of thinking about how we get this committee working better. It may be that certain of the things that we exercise ourselves about are not getting done because all the things that are on this list don't allow it to happen. Rob, Ian, and then I'm going to move on again.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I think it's useful for us to understand whether the decisions we've taken are being enacted, whether that's through this report or some other forum. The way I say this being useful as a reference for us is to your point, Max, understanding the capacity on whether the work they're doing is routine operational jobs would preclude any new activities that we've committed to as a council or committee. Because they might be looking at this and say, actually, June and July are really busy for them, so it's an unrealistic expectation for them to do this additional thing in June and July. Just a reference document, afterwards, something that we refer to, you've got to look at all the time.
Ian.
Just a small bit of background about why this was started. And if you look at the original Moral Teams, it goes back to 2019, 2020, 2021. It felt that on estates we were constantly firefighting rather than looking ahead. And the ambition on this was that rather than being surprised that there was a pre-survey report suddenly on our desk, we know that it was coming every 3 years. So, for example, the paint on the toilet, we decided we'd look at every 2 years. So we made a note in here to make sure it was done every 2 years. And the idea was that that would help us with budgeting as well.
And that's why I want to sit down and tease out where we are coming up with a clearer plan of what is both on the shopping list and what was going to come onto the shopping list, if that makes sense. But I want to disentangle that from what is essentially Lisa's plan about what the staff are doing month by month, week by week, if you see what I mean. Because a lot of what's on that list, and it's incredibly useful, is, well, this is ongoing work. It's a bit like painting the Forth Road Bridge. In May we do this, in April we do this, and whatever, and then we all start again next May, and so on and so forth. But it's about trying to work out what we really need as a committee that helps us to make informed decisions. John?
So I'll say 4 points and then I agree you should move on because you've clearly got this on your to-do list. Point 1, what's to go to this committee? Make policy, make decisions. Executive decisions, not operational decisions. Point 2, and to your point, Liz, and to your point, Max, and to your point as well, Bob, we need it as a point of reference. Why? You're checking what the deputy town clerk does. Sorry, the deputy town clerk has a job. If as part of that job, and this may be to your point, Max, we say, right, every 2 years this happens, that's an important thing. But to know when we're mowing the lawn is not important. And you risk not seeing the wood for the trees. If you've got too much information, you can't identify which information you actually need. That's a simple management principle. And as part of that point, you say it's a reference book. How many times has this committee actually gone through this and said, oh, we're about to do that. Oh, we're about to do this. Oh, I don't know. But I ask you, when you look at this and say, that's operational, Lisa, get on with it. We need to know if there's an issue coming up. And how much does it, A, take time in discussion, and B, preclude us seeing the wood for the trees? My third point is, it's incumbent on the Deputy Town Clerk to say this is coming up, not for us to check whether she's saying this is coming up. And my fourth point is, just what about time and resource? If we as a committee, or you as a committee, and we as a council are saying, here are 4 or 5 things we want to do over the next 4 or 5 years, I would rather this committee focused on what's big and what's important, rather than managing the operations. That's why we've got Lisa. And if we think she's doing, I'm going to talk about it here, Lisa. If we think she's doing a good job, why are we micromanaging her? That's Emma's job. If we don't think she's doing a good job, that's a different conversation. And I don't think we think you're doing a bad job. I think we think you're doing a good job. So why are we interfering? That's all I'm going to say. But please bear all those things in mind, Max. What's the point of this committee? What's the purpose of it?
Liz, do you?
No, the only point I would say to that is I agree. Nearly all of that, I actually agree. But I think it has been interesting, and I think for you as a working document, it's really good. But when we've had situations a bit like the cemetery, when was it last cut? When should it be? It is a better point of reference of going back. Now, whether that's we just ask you and say when should it be done, and you access it, you can. But we might save time in a meeting if we go, oh, should it be done, or it hasn't been done, or it has been done. So something's clearly not working. But
yeah, and I don't prolong this, but I think this is where we've got to sit down with this, because we're coming on to the next agenda item, which is the open spaces inspection. What I will point out is that many of the things we observed in the last open spaces inspection still haven't actually been actioned here we are a year on. And why haven't they been actioned? Because there's no resource. It's not actually necessarily about money. A lot of it's actually simply about resource to do it, because of everything else on the other spreadsheet. And we can put things on spreadsheet, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're prioritised to get done. So that we're going around in circles. We have received this, we've discussed it quite a lot. I don't think there's any point in discussing it any further. I think all of what's been said is helpful and relevant. I will do my best as chair to try and make sense of it. That's all I can say. I know Lisa would like to make sense of it as much as anybody else. We're certainly not getting any resistance there, but it's up to us to ask Lisa to find a system that works for her and for us. So that's what she and I will work together to try and achieve. So let's move on to really the meat of the meeting. Yeah, that was the introduction. Here we go, 15 minutes in. John asked me before the meeting what time would it end. I'm just gonna change my estimate of that.
We have to get permission to get the whole.
Right, we'll move on. So Glen House, the key thing there is what I've already talked about before, which are the open spaces inspection. We normally do these over the summer. They got quite dragged out last year. I don't know quite why, but we like normally to do them over the course of 2 weeks, do we not? And we like to do them primarily before August. So Lisa, I'm first of all going to look at you. When works for you? Because I don't know when you're on holiday. I don't know.
I've not got any things booked in at the moment. So if anything, I have 2 weeks off in August during half term, but I haven't booked anything. So
have you got any particular weeks you would wish it? So again, we would normally try and do it over 2 weeks. We normally, again, are we recommending that we do it into 3
splitting it up, yeah.
zones as before, north, central and south? I think, Ian, you took North. I did all three last year. I think you took North.
One is courthouse, cemetery.
I think you took Central.
Is that Central?
You weren't involved. It was actually, yeah. So, would you like to take one each? Although Jamie normally likes to be involved as well.
Yeah, well, if you set up the 3 days, then hopefully Jamie can
Yeah,
join.
if you've not been on one before, Rob, the tours I find incredibly useful, because certainly the first time I was on this commission, I went on a tour, I thought, oh, I had no idea that's where Joe Strong building was, or whatever it might be. They are eye-openers. I think Liz went on one for the first time last year, and it was an eye-opener for you. So they're very good things. I'm going to look at my own diary and start the bidding, because I'm away in June. I don't think it's going to happen much before July. John, are you going to tell me that you want to come on them as well?
No, I'm going to suggest that rather than try diary management in the middle of a meeting, we use Doodle poll and do it that way. We can then move on here, and those who aren't here can interject as to what's best for them.
Yeah.
In the interest of efficiency.
Hang on, say that again. I was looking at my diary at the same time.
Don't look at your diary. Let's not do diary management in the middle of the meeting.
Yeah.
Let's use Doodle polling. Lisa can set up Doodle poll, and we can use that to identify. You can tell me.
I was going to suggest that we do a poll, but I was going to suggest that there are certain dates that we could also avoid straight away.
Okay,
So if you're going to do a poll, sorry, which is why I was looking at my diary.
yeah.
I'm almost of the view that you should ignore June altogether, because I'm away from the 23rd of June until the beginning of July, and I don't think you'd be organising it. So start in July, but try and avoid the week, starting the 21st of July. So if we could look at the July dates, I prefer not to go into August.
Okay.
So July, except apart from the week starting the 21st.
Okay.
Okay?
Couldn't use this. What's the 4 months under the remit of these visits?
So what we have normally done in the past is that we meet late afternoon or evening, early evening, depending on who's on the tour and what their work commitments or otherwise might be. We separate them into 3 zones purely because of the length it times to take to do these. They're very rarely done in less than 2 hours, a tour. What we then do is that we compile essentially a register of our thoughts, issues that we've raised during the tour, work that we think needs to be done. We then later try and put a budget and a cost on that and a prioritisation on that. So it helps us to produce a kind of work plan for the future. And it will feed directly into everything else that we've been talking about in terms of informing the meeting going forward.
Who goes on these tours? There's a councillor for each of these areas. Who else?
So you're welcome to come on more than one tour, but we need at least myself, Lisa, and one other councillor to do each tour.
Okay.
Let us send round the poll, and then you just sign up accordingly. Okay.
I mean, ideally, when I first started, Emma said to me, the best scenario is if all of the councillors go on all the
Basically,
visits.
all of us do it
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
And it
Starts
was,
at 7 and finish out there about 5 o'clock.
and we'd start quite thorough, wouldn't we? And then
By the end of it.
towards the end, you're just
Yeah.
rushing through.
And that's the
That's why
danger.
you
That's
think
the
the idea of
danger of
fixing
doing
it.
it all in one go. You just get blasé at the end. John.
Do we link this to the asset register? Do we check the properties that we have got and the assets we've got as you go around? Do we take those from the asset register? Do we check it back again?
We haven't, no.
Because it's a
No.
perfect opportunity to check the asset register
Yeah.
I know there are things on there that we don't actually own
Absolutely, yeah.
anymore.
I mean, yeah, I don't know how long it would take to do that, or whether the councillors on the tour would.
When you've gone through with all of the assets and said, right, we've got this, we've got this, we've got
Yeah,
this,
we
we've got
talked
the asset
about
register,
it,
tick off or not.
Yeah,
last year.
it's just a useful checklist as we go through, just to make sure the two converge.
Okay.
So, the ball is now in your court, Lisa. So thank you in advance for organising that. Right, let's now move on to maintenance. So I've got to log myself back in again. So, 10.01.01 workshop, fence line suggestions for planting to soften, decide next steps.
This is me.
Yeah.
So when we were talking about the fence last time, it just felt as if it was a good opportunity to think about, since we were losing a couple of car parking spaces and moving the fence line out, was there anything we could do to soften the fence line? Pots or plants or something, just so here. And it's just something to consider perhaps on the stage tour. I mean, it all seems to blend in relatively well.
I think it looks good, yeah.
But there's no reason that it has to be a high space out there. That was it.
I know that there's no budget for this, apparently.
No, there's nothing showing on the budget sheet.
It's the first time it's been discussed, I think.
Yeah. Well, I think before anyway, because it was a new thing, we were allocating funds on an ad hoc basis, weren't we, when things needed doing? Because you initially set £20,000 for the containers.
Correct.
So, yeah,
Just remind me as well, does the gate swing?
no,
It slides.
rolls
So
back
it's
on
like,
itself.
but does that affect putting planters if it's?
It slides
It's in the back, it goes in the back. I'm not sure how it would work though, because if you put planters there, then the one space that is accessible, it would.
It seems to me, so I'm just going to try and cut this short. Yeah, it'd be a nice idea to soften the line, all of that kind of, soften the, do some planting, all that kind of stuff. But I think what we need is a proper proposal. We don't really have a proposal, so I'm not quite sure. There's no costs involved. Yes, the idea is great. So I don't know, where's the proposal coming from?
Well, it was a
It's
suggestion.
just a suggestion from me.
That's all it was, but I'll be quiet, it's fine.
Well, that's a suggestion. As I say, I don't think anyone is.
So let's look at it on the term.
Yeah. Okay. In which case, then let's move on to 10.01.02, discuss additional line marking. This is again, there has been some costs and there have been documents showing all sorts of lines and stuff. Here we go. This is from a company called Linemark. That's an original name for a company that does this kind of stuff. And yeah, there we go. There's the pictures which you've also annotated.
So is the bin store redundant now?
Gone.
Yeah, that's been.
So we can, that space to the right of it, we could just extend that line, another space there. And then what we need to do is cross hatch across this bit, so no parking, because the other day, the boys had gone out and there was cars everywhere and two people, even though the gate was open and the yard was clearly visible, two people from Volunteer Action parked in front of it. So the boys come back with a trailer, and this was very soon after we'd, sort of taken the bin store down and everything. So we definitely need, the signs have come yesterday to put up on the walls, but we need some markings on the floor.
And the quotation that we have essentially does what you need, because you've got different things going on
Yeah,
there.
so this space, see, this is the space that is usable, but
Yeah.
obviously there's a very narrow amount of space here. So I thought if we put that staff parking only, so that they've always got a place to go
Right.
to when they're in and out. And then
And
there's
then the
cross
no
hatching
parking goes
there,
over there.
yeah, and then obviously there's this extra space here where the
Yeah,
bin store was, but then the cross hatching would come across here. So it's very clear, you know.
And the quotation is to put that additional marking down, or also to go
Yeah.
over the existing marking.
This one here, just this one here, not all of
Yeah,
them.
yeah,
not
just
the
that
whole
one, yeah,
car park.
okay.
They're fairly visible, or they're very visible. So yeah, so that's the quote for that.
And go down to the magic number at the bottom, which I've seen earlier on, but there we go.
And I did query this with them because I saw that for what we've asked them to do here, and compared to the quote for the drill hall car park, which is relining all of
I
it,
was going to say,
It wasn't
that's
much
the point I was going to
apparently they
raise.
have a minimum
It
charge.
seems to me that it's almost like a per diem charge,
Yeah. It says they've got a minimum line charge for coming out.
It will precisely, so we're paying, so my next question is, if we get them to do them both
At the same time,
pretty much at the same time, will we save money?
I can ask them, will they give us a bit of discount if we have them done together? I can ask them.
So anyway, those are my sets of questions. Liz?
Okay, I have two ones. If there's a minimum charge, do the lines need redoing on here?
Here?
Yeah.
No.
No, right, are they?
No.
And my second thing is, the yellow hatching on their email is really ugly
Yeah.
and bright and not very pleasant for everybody. So is there a dull down version of that? I can put
It's 11 colours.
Yeah.
Still, would you agree?
Can this be one?
Yes, why would be better, then it would just, well, this is a bit.
Because that's just you with a mark.
It is,
Yeah, I mean,
that's
generally they do it, if you see, I think, yeah, here,
Awful.
generally they do. I can ask them, I think they do it in yellow.
More subtle,
They do
more
it
subtle.
okay.
And do you feel the same with the drill hall car park as well? So the bits where in front of the garage.
Again,
where
there'll be
that's-
no parking around that.
Yeah, but you want it white or something.
Well, that's, I mean, obviously we've got residents and.
Yeah.
So it's,
True, yeah,
it's, you know, people want to look out their front windows onto this side.
We'll get on to civics later, so let's stick with the principles. John? You're happy?
Yeah.
So I think our proposal is that what we'd like you to do, Lisa, is to ask them to re-quote as to whether or not they consider it as a single job.
Yeah.
And then come back to us. I don't think, I know that's a delay, but I think it's probably a delay worth having. Rob, sorry, did you have a question, Rob? No. You might also ask them whether they're different yellows, but I don't think that's a deal breaker.
No. I mean, if it's a legal, I don't know, Matt, could it be a legal requirement that the road markings have to
Well,
be
it's not on
It's a
public highways.
It's private land, do it right.
Yeah, I think, highway.
I'd like glitter in it, please. Right, let's move on. Okay.
Actually, Max, can you approve the cost as are,
Oh,
and then I don't have to bring it back then?
That's a
See if I
very
can
good
get some
point.
discount.
I think that would be that's a good suggestion.
Yeah.
Are we happy with the quotes that we've got? You saw the one, they're very similar. They're basically, no, don't worry, you had it there.
Yeah.
I can get it here,
Sorry,
don't worry.
it's here, it's here, that's the Clayton House.
Yeah.
895 plus that, and then,
They're roughly they're around about 1,100,
Yeah.
1,200.
Can I ask a question about the other one? Because
hang on.
I think there might be a catch
Yeah.
on this one.
And is he the guy that's actually going to do it?
I don't know.
So this one, when you
Notice, the other thing I was going to raise about this, they don't seem to be talking about reconfiguring it at all.
No,
It's
right,
purely
yeah,
about going
well,
over.
I was gonna give you the update on that, on the drill hall one, but
Oh,
we've
okay.
sort of jumped ahead, but, so he came out and he looked at it, and The only alteration he would make is the ones that park along the front wall.
Yeah,
And because I said to him, what about making them start going sideways? You won't fit any more cars in, but it makes it flow better and people can move in and out of spaces.
right,
He said they should be reversing into the spaces, and he said if you put them on an angle, it will make them easier to reverse into.
yeah,
And the only other alteration that he said and suggested was where we currently don't like cars parking, which is against the drill wall fence, you know, that chap that used to advertise his car, he says you can fit 2 spaces in there
Yeah,
easily. So he said, I'd
so
want
that,
to.
so they would, they've made that consideration.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that.
Can I just scroll up a little bit and
Yes.
ask one other thing before we agree, I think? No, sorry, a little bit down, yeah, that middle one there.
There.
That's got a big one next to it. Car parking spaces reinstated, but it doesn't say how many are being reinstated. And we know it's all of them.
Yes, it is. I said to him, can we do exactly as you see it now? He did ask whether, you know, in front of the munitions bunker, the farm, the one at the back, there's always a van park there. And he said, oh, if access is needed to that, do you want me to do some cross hatching there? And I said, well, no, I don't think so. Because I think that the person who owns the van must know the rifle club because they're there quite often. And I said, no vehicles come in and out. So we've never had any complaints. So I said, just leave it as it is. But definitely in front of that residence garage, I said, we've got to have some markings. I have occasionally seen cars that are parked there. So yeah, no, pretty much everything is as it was, just with the inclusion of those 2 other spaces being marked out and having them on a diagonal at the front wall.
Okay. John?
Are we just having diagonals on the front or on all the parking places?
No, he said it wouldn't work with all of them.
Okay.
It wouldn't be any benefit, he said. But he saw it as being a benefit from the ones on the front,
Okay.
based on the way the people were parked on the day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so are we happy to accept up to the maximum of the 2 quotations we have in the expectation that we can maybe bring it down lower by combining the jobs? Yes?
Yes.
I'm happy to propose that. John, I think seconded. Yeah, all in favour. Right, let's move on. Next one is discuss adjacent residents' notification process of work at Fletton House, which will potentially affect them and decide next steps.
I think this is.
This is putting this up.
It's getting there. I think, can I talk about this?
Yes.
My thing.
I'm
I
looking at
feel
you to
that
do so.
as a council, and obviously we have residents, including obviously the old people, so we're going to start doing roofing work. I think it's polite just to put a polite letter in their doors, purely just to say, just to warn you, this is what's happening, not for them to give an opinion of whether we are happy it's happening or not, but just to notify them. I think it would be a polite thing to do. That's it. That's all I want to say.
Certainly got no reason why we shouldn't.
Okay.
And, you know, that applies if we start doing major work on any of our
Yeah.
assets, I think, as a matter of principle.
Who will do that? And when?
Yeah. That we just notify immediate residents of our intention.
Yeah, and ideally the start date would be quite good, so that I think the bank holiday post putting in up.
Yeah.
So I think it's just that, but yeah, who would do that? I don't know.
And when?
Okay, so we're happy with that proposal that in future we do look to notify adjacent and immediate residents of works relating to any of our assets. Okay,
Max, I think Liz was suggesting we do it now for Fletton House, and my question was who would do it and
Yeah.
when would do it.
so we'll do it retrospectively for Fletton House and essentially in future for other works. Vehicles, 1002, new van delivered and now in use. Charging point also now installed and in use, hurrah. 03, equipment, ride-on mower. I kind of feel that, this has gone round and round in circles. The Val's turned up for the 7 o'clock meeting.
I think sitting at home, killing time.
Watching it on YouTube.
Yeah, you should be watching it on YouTube. We'll bring you up to date later on. We've assigned all sorts of things to you to do. We've elected you deputy. No, we haven't. Right, Noah, there are documents on this. Again, this has gone round and round like a storm in the valley. We recommended various things and then they've been kicked back and we've had new recommendations. And Lisa, we now have option 1 and option 2.
Well, there's
Oh, no, it's gone again.
the very important option 3 as well.
Where's option 3 and 2?
Oh, the email from out.
Right. So, and there's also this on my desk as well.
Is that the hustler?
Yeah, that's the,
So, do you want to summarise where we are with this, Lisa? Because it has,
well, basically, in the email says that there's those 2 quotes, or the quotes from Izeki. But Fenton's demoed the Hustler one, and Nobby and Tony liked how it performed. As she says there, so this one's a verbal quote only at the minute. They take the John Deere off you for a down payment, and then you can either lease it at £385 a month. And then over 36 months, it would be hours, or you can hire it for 250, but obviously it would then never be ours.
well, you need to just get rid of that.
I know.
So, yeah. So the Izeki, I don't know how you pronounce that, they're the quotes that we just.
Yeah, okay, so, questions, comments, Ian?
Just a little bit of background, if we could go back to the email.
Lost it now.
So the quote from Euromet was last 6 months ago, maybe, when the mower started dying. It's very expensive. They didn't give us a demonstration. And they said that they were pretty sure the mower was fitting the containers, pretty sure. Fenton's is a local guy over at Market Deeping somewhere, who we got in contact when we were looking at vehicle replacement. I've spoken to their managing director and he seemed outstandingly helpful. They help Clacton Town Council, lots of schools, lots of big establishments nearby. And the really good thing about them is this idea that we can purchase stuff over a longer period of time. They're also able to drop all machinery off if we need it. And this Hustler one is the sort that their gardener at the school recommended. And they came over. John and Nobby had a demonstration down at the wreck. It cuts closer, it cuts the nearest trees, it's more manoeuvrable, and it's road legal, so we don't need the trailer anymore. So it seems, as a device, a win, and financially it's a win, and we'll take the old tractor away as a down payment, and then effectively we just need to decide whether we lease it and own it, or hire it and hand it back when there are problems. So it seems a no-brainer that that's the better machine and that's the better deal
Okay, the key thing is this is above our pay grade anyway. So I think that the decision we've got to make now is whether we're going to recommend this for full council. This has been discussed ad infinitum for quite a long time. Recommendations were made, then they were withdrawn, and then we had new recommendations. I think we've got to have some form of closure on this personally. So I would like to propose that, given what we have clearly now the backing of Nobby and Tony.
Can I ask one thing?
Yes.
Sorry, before you finish. The 385, does that come with any service? So do they take responsibility of the servicing it yearly while we do the 36 months or not?
I don't know.
I've not seen anything in the
Okay,
information.
because that might be worth finding out,
Yeah.
because that also makes me just.
So if you could do that, I think what I'd like to do is then propose that this recommendation goes to full council with the proviso that Liz had just mentioned, so that question is not asked at full council. Rob?
To check as well, from the finance perspective, there's no building payments at the end of the 36-month period, is there?
Not that I'm aware of.
Is it full ownership there?
I think
Just
so.
doing a quick calculation just to make sure. What's the down payment for the,
Well, they're taking the down payment of 4,000,
The John Deere's worth 4,000.
yeah, John Deere's worth
And
4,000.
that's where the hire system is less overall and you just constantly replace it, which is attractive to me, but
Sorry, I think hiring is much less attractive because the total cost of ownership would be much greater, because in 3 years' time we own a tractor or mower, whatever it is. Or in 3 years' time we have to have another hire agreement.
Mm.
So I think it's a false economy. I think it's subject to this. But actually I'd phrase your proposal slightly differently, which is the proposal is made anyway, but we ask that question so we can answer it ahead of time, but we don't make our proposal contingent on a positive answer, because otherwise it'll come back again.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're all happier as that is a way forward?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, who was the seconder?
are we proposing the hustler? Because we haven't said
Yeah.
that.
Yes. Yeah,
Are you seconding Ian?
On Bowser.
Oh, well, okay.
yes.
You go back.
Everyone happy?
Okay, all those in favour? Yep, thank you very much. So let's move on to the hub where there's nothing to report. I like that. 12, courthouse. So I need to go back to my other document. Of course, sorry, it's not on that one, it's on this one. Never mind. Okay, here we go, open spaces report. To receive an update regarding Annex Office 3, what is that update, Lisa?
Okay, so you know the tenant was very ill, and we've been very
Is that the one that has been empty for quite a while?
well, it's not empty, it's still full of this
Well,
stuff.
yeah, full of stuff, but
So we wrote to him, we emailed, we did lots of things, we gave him a deadline, we consulted with the solicitor who told us what steps to take. They said after giving him a reasonable amount of time, we could remove his items from and tell him that we were taking possession back of the thing. We did give him extended deadlines because it was poorly, but then it got to the point and I said to him, we've got to sort this out. So I said, we'll do one more letter, I will hand deliver it and go and visit him because he lives fairly local. And I'll just reinforce that this has to be sorted. I know you're really not very well, but there must be somebody that can help you get it sorted. Anyway, he is incredibly poorly. So I felt quite, what's the word? I don't know. Not like I wanted to say to him, sorry, you just got to sort it, if that makes sense. So he was under the impression, because of the last deadline we gave him, that it had all been done. So he clearly wasn't bothered about any of the stuff that was in there. But so then Emma and I said, right, so we'll either get a skip, get rid of the bits and pieces, but then we just thought legally, he's got computers in there, he's got filing cabinets, he's got all sorts of stuff. So then Emma said, well, perhaps we should just get a hire van and deliver the stuff to him, remove it from the office and deliver it to him. And so this email was basically just asking our solicitor what they think we should do. And you can see the response, but it's not very helpful that they say at the end of it, if you do want some more concrete advice, I will pass it on. But you may consider that the cost associated with this is disproportionate to the cost difference between the skip and the van hire. So it's basically, what do you want us to do? What do you want us to do?
Does the chap, when you went to see him, did he say what, did
He said, oh, I'm ever so sorry. He said, I thought you'd have done it, and I said, well, we were going to, but considering your circumstances, it didn't sit right with any of us to just do that.
Oh, right.
So I said, we've left it for a little bit, but we need to draw a line under this. And his response was, I'll do what I can this weekend. I went to see him on the Friday. I'll do my very best to try and get something sorted this weekend, but he hasn't, and he's not come back to me again, so, yeah, so it's a bit.
So Ian and then John.
The lease for the property clearly has a paragraph 12.2. The tenant irrevocably appoints the landlord to be the tenant's agent to store or dispose of any chattels, fittings or items that is fixed to the property that have been left by the tenant on the property for more than 10 working days after the end of the term. Are we more than 10 working days over?
No, well, this is the tricky thing. He never ended up signing his lease right from the beginning. To be fair, he's been problematic right from the beginning. What happened was in the beginning, he sent his signed documents, but he sent it to the wrong branch of the solicitors. They then sent it on to the correct branch and it never got there. So he, being very busy, was rightly reluctant and said, why should I take time off work to redo all of this? So it didn't start on a good basis anyway. And then obviously, just after a year into his tenancy, he got very, very ill. So he stopped paying his rent, because he'd always been paying his rent, but he just hadn't signed the lease.
He's not signed a lease?
No.
Well, he should never have been let in before he signed a lease.
But he was let in when he'd posted the stuff back and the solicitor had confirmed they'd got the lease, that it was just sent to the wrong one.
Well, that's another issue, but so it does complicate the matter because we don't technically have a legal agreement in place. John?
Isn't the simplest thing to go around with a letter authorising Hamilton Town Council to dispose of his assets
Yeah,
and
well, that's
ask him to sign it?
Yeah.
And then just skip a lot and then we move on.
Yeah, then we're covering ourselves against any,
Because the question I was going to ask was whether we have the right, because you should have that right in the tenancy agreement. Ian confirmed we do, but if we don't have his signature, it's invalid. So the best thing to do, get him to sign a piece of paper.
Okay.
Okay, so have you got what you need from that? You now know what the next steps are, Lisa?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So next one is to approve costs for the servicing and maintenance checks on the courthouse fire alarms.
Again, these are the things that have to be done. One of those things that appears on the list that they do, then they do them over 2 visits a year.
Again, you will have seen well, it's up on the big screen there. You can see it's 512 plus VAT. So it's going to be about £575 in all. And it's work we have to do. I mean, I don't think it's worth the discussion. Just approve it. Propose, seconded, move on. Right, good.
Done the next one, so that's okay.
We're on to car parks again. We've already talked about the lines in the Drill Hall car park. Discuss quote for approval, recommendations of full council. I think we've kind of done that already. I don't think there's anything more that we need to discuss. Public toilets.
So can I just ask one question on this? It says for approval recommendations at full council. Why is it going to full council? Because the total amount is £1,700. It's within your limit.
Yeah, it's the budget issue again. The fact that there's only a £500 drill ball budget set, and it's above that.
Okay.
So it has to come from reserves. I have to agree that it's coming from reserves, don't you?
Okay, public toilets. Action last time, new notice board is now installed. Considerations going forward, pipe work. This is something that's just clearly going to get picked up on the tour, surely, no? Or is there something more emergent than
I don't
that?
think you ever go in that room, do you? But it will need doing at some point when it next fails.
Okay, but there's nothing we can make a decision on tonight.
No.
No, in which case then let's move forward to open spaces and other properties and open spaces. First of all, the rugby. I don't think there's, well, we've got this, I'm not quite sure where it is on the agenda. There's this issue to do with the sign that I remember reading about.
It's not on the agenda, it's come up.
That's not on the,
No, it's a report.
it is, you're right, it's under AOB. Well, okay, no, in which case then there is nothing to discuss. Recreation ground, there is issue there in relation to the skate park. I remember seeing some rather nasty pictures with
The whole thing.
holes in the ramp.
Yeah, they're all done. They're in that hole
So-
there.
Clearly the ramp is damaged.
Not anymore. It's done.
Sorry?
It's been done.
Oh, it's been done? Okay, fine, sorry. In which case, great. I like it when things are done, we don't actually have to make decisions about them. In which case, I think we can move on then to the letter. This is about the boundary fence and the dispute between the rec ground and 57 Gordon Road. Again, hopefully, councillors, you've all seen the letter. I will invite comments on it in a minute, but my initial response was, is this really good enough? They're basically saying, well, you can ignore the fence that's there at the moment and we'll think about it the next time the fence needs to be replaced. It's clearly on our land, they admit that, yet they're clearly prepared not to do anything about it until sometime when the fence may need replacing again. That's my reading of it. So, comments, thoughts, what action do we want to take? Action number one is that we accept the letter and do nothing about it and wait until the fence falls over again and then take up the issue. Or option two is to say, no, it's up to you to put the fence back in the right place. It seems to me those are the only two options. Comments, views?
We were there, the guy was quite blasé about the whole thing, wasn't he? And he said, no, the fence line's in the right place, basically you'll see it's all come out. And then we looked at the concrete pillars and he went, well, yeah, maybe 6 inches, yeah, maybe this. But he finally accepted the point that it was in the wrong place, even though marginal. I think he must have said we're a housing association, not for profit, what, 25 times? And said, do you think it's reasonable to ask a not-for-profit organisation to redo the fence? We pointed out, well, it's in the wrong place. And his solution was to write this letter saying, please let us keep it up until it falls down. And I can see his point of view, but we've just talked about the street lights at Bassett Place for a while, and the exceptions we make now are the ones that people want to pick up in 10 years' time. And that's the concern. But I think we tried to make him understand. I'm not sure how it worked. That's the niggle for me.
John, think you had a hand up?
Only to say that you create precedent, you allow this to happen, somebody else will go, you've done it before. And to Ian's point, we can make a decision today, and the council that was elected in 2025, that the council that's elected in 2033 may not have as many people around to remember it.
Yeah.
And in 2037, even further. And by then, he could have taken the concrete post out and it's done. So if the principle is important, we should stick to it.
Well,
I agree. I think that's a really good reason why the fence line couldn't be where it should be.
Yeah.
And just accepting it or waiting for the fence to blow over to really address it is not appropriate. It wouldn't be appropriate if I own this land privately and somebody infringed on my land. And the same principle applies for us as a town council owning that land. So on that basis, I don't think we should accept.
Val, sorry.
Well, we've
See,
always had this thin end of the wedge situation with that boundary. My view is it should be put back where it should be because it's too easy for people to forget about it and land up in a dispute where somebody says, well, you know, it's mine now because I've been using it for the last 10 years.
6
You know,
inches today is
it's
12
just-
inches tomorrow.
They know what they're doing, however blasé they might be. That's my view. Because we've had it time and time again.
Okay, so I think what we're proposing is that this goes to full council for a decision that we reject what's being suggested in the letter.
Can't we just reject it?
Yeah, I think. I don't see what has to go to full council.
Oh, right.
Not a monetary
What makes it a
decision
full
or
council
anything, is it?
matter?
What makes it a full council matter? Oh, sorry, I thought, from my mind, I think it becomes a full council matter because of the potential legal implications.
If we're happy to say, bat it back to them, if they come back and say they won't with it, then it becomes a full council issue. But at the moment, let's go back and say, no, thanks, you're off, but we'd like to nudge it back to the right place.
Okay, in which case then that's fine, we can make that decision then without it going full council. So do you need a proposal for that?
Yeah, if you just.
So I think Ian is eventually proposing that. I'm happy to second it. All those in favour? Thank you very much. Right, so
Other interest.
I perhaps should have had a declaration of interest. I've got this is on the agenda. There is a proposal from Creative Oundle that, as per usual, they use the recreation ground for car parking at Part of the Wharf. I should have declared an interest, and I'm sorry for that, because I'm a trustee of Creative Oundle. So I'm happy to withdraw if you want to discuss it.
Can I make a proposal that we approve the Creative Oundle request?
Could I just ask a question before we do? In 3 or 4 items time, we're looking at the flat field hire agreement that goes into some detail about the terms of what we do with flat. Do we have an agreement like that, the use of the rec?
Yeah.
With all the same questions and stuff
Yeah.
like that? I'll second it.
Do you want to have the usual caveat that if it's absolutely solid with rain, that's what we usually say?
Yeah, there's normally a proviso that it's weather dependent.
I think we need to notify people.
Yeah.
Basketball court users and stuff.
Again, sorry?
Some sort of notification that the rec's going to be used. I still remember my.
I'm not sure I should be chairing this session.
Oh, because they,
But Val wants to make it.
Well, yes, I'm just thinking about if when other organisations want to use the rec, how do they pay for the fee for, as it were, borrowing the rec?
the circus.
Because they have, yeah,
Yeah, they pay a standing charge when they're just on there, and then they pay a performance day charge, which is double. So like with the fairgrounds and the circus, they put it on a Sunday, and then their performances are like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, so they get charged different, and they have to pay a £300 deposit up front.
so does that apply then to Creative Oundle?
Well, it hasn't
The
done in
same,
the past.
I mean, we ought to have some kind of,
Yeah, I feel I ought to maybe not get involved in this. In the past, no charge
No,
has
it
been.
hasn't, no.
One thing I would say is that the circus is not local, this benefits the local
Yeah.
community.
I think that
Be
was the
my
thinking
argument
before, yeah.
against charging them.
That has always been the thinking behind it, hasn't it? It's something for the people of Oundle, so it's something done by local people. It's the same with the football. When the football people have asked to use it when they're flooding, we agreed not to charge them because it's.
so we're saying we've now got a system, if you like, where that we charge for people who are non-Oundle, but if it's an Oundle
Yeah, I'm
organisation,
trying
they
not
get
to
it.
actually be chair at the moment.
Well, I should have bit wrong.
I'm not sure I agree with that approach actually, because if say the turf is all damaged by people's cars coming to the party of the wall, it's the town who ultimately pays for the repairs. Arguably the circus is for local people as well. We'd expect the circus to pay for the damage. But if the part of the wall damaged forward surfing, we would have to pay for it out of residents' money. So just a little cautious
Good
about
point.
that.
Ian?
It goes back to my first point about the hire agreement for Flat and Field, because that very clearly has a deposit of £300, but it doesn't say it's ignored in some cases, etc. So I'm not saying we do it for this case, but I think if we're going to say there are conditions to Flat and Field, we should probably say the same conditions apply to the rec, because it's the same issue. We get huge detail about that, but that's quite a bit of land.
Did you have another point, Val?
No, well, I think I've made my point.
Okay.
I agree that it should be the same system for all.
So is there a formal proposal from you, Ian?
So my formal process, we say yes on this occasion, but maybe as part of our tour, we say that moving forward, we should, whatever we agree on the Flat and Field hire agreement, we should transpose that to the rec for future uses.
Just to be clear, are you suggesting that we don't do anything for Creative Outlet this time, but in 10 minutes' time when we approve Flat and Field, we use that for Creative Outlet next time? Or that we do it for Creative Outlet and use the Flat and Field hire agreement when you go back to Creative Outlet in 10 minutes and say you can have the field?
It doesn't feel like the right time to make policy
Okay.
about how we use rec. So I think you say this occasion, we continue with our existing ad hoc policy. Once we have a policy for Flat and Field, we look to, in the next meeting, the next month, draft an equivalent for the rec and approve it at our next meeting.
Do I have a seconder for that? Or a counter proposal? Do I have a seconder? Rob, so all those in favour?
I think I'll step up.
Okay, 4 in favour, abstention or against?
No, abstention.
Abstention, and you're abstaining as well. So 2 abstentions, 4 in favour. And the action point really is to draw up that agreement for the day. So, Rob, thank you.
The recreation ground one was done before the Flat and Field one, and I think Rebecca had just basically lifted all the detail from the recreation ground one, so they should be almost identical.
And
I think she just copied them like for like kind of thing.
So we're almost there anyway.
Yeah.
This proposal, which has now been approved, is to use the current arrangement for the rec.
Yeah.
Cool. Back to you.
Right, thank you for that, John. Sorry that I was conflicted, shall we say. At the same time, I've lost for some reason my open whatever report. So we're down to open spaces, but I'm trying to look at Lisa's report, which somehow I've just lost. Let's open it up again. This is the problem I always struggle with because we're looking at too many documents simultaneously. Let me open it up again. Open Spaces report. I just want to double check that there's nothing on there. Open Spaces, here we go. Right. So, I'm here there now. Right, open spaces, other green spaces, slight meadows, signage, wildflower plan. And looking at Lisa's other document, there's
It's all on Flat and Field now.
yeah. There's nothing specifically that we need to talk about there. So Flat and Field, again, there is the agreement document that just been talked about.
We just also, but before that, you need to appoint who's going to sit on the OTC Flat and Field Working Party, because obviously Jerry was on that.
We need to,
So we need a replacement for Jerry.
I don't know if we want to do the hire agreement first, the hire. It's just been referred to by Ian, so let's talk about that first. And and then we can talk about benches, and then we can talk about the working party. So we have this pro forma document, which has been circulated. Has anybody got any comments on that? It's very similar to the document that we used for both hire rooms here and at QVH. But Ian,
I've got a few. I don't know if you want to go through them one by one, or if there's anyone wants to make any more general points. But mine are quite tedious.
well, okay, you can make a start. I've got a few comments as well, but
Okay, if we go at the top there, top right hand corner, where it says tick to confirm.
Yeah.
Says, I have enclosed a copy of my public liability insurance. Have we told them what value we expect? 5 million or 10 million? I think by
don't know.
reference anyway.
No, I
And
don't
that's normal now for most hire agreements, as you say, 5 or 10 million. So,
So you want that added?
well, we need to make a decision and add it, I think.
yeah. Okay, rattle them off and I'll just add
Next one down, I've enclosed the management plan of what? And the management plan, what have we said what we expect from the management plan? Car parking, whatever, I don't know. But you can enclose a management plan and say, I'm not going to manage it. You've met the needs of the form, but are we
Okay.
happy with that? I've enclosed a risk assessment. Same thing, who checks the risk assessment? Have we given them any expectation about what they need to manage? I've read the privacy notice. Where do I find the privacy notice?
Right, okay.
And coming down, point number 8 on the next page. I can send you my copy of the document if you want to have all these highlights.
Yeah, that'd be helpful.
Point number 8. Noise must be kept at a reasonable level for a residential area, and no sound should emit from Fletfield to cause undue nuisance. Do we define what emitting is? You know, a child's party at 3 o'clock in the afternoon might have sound emitting from it. I don't know. Have we got that wording from somewhere else?
Yeah,
Right. And then playing music was finished by 11. Is everyone okay with that? I know our license says to 11, but do we need to tell our residents that? Is there any notification of residents if the field's going to be used for anything? Point number 10, selling consumption of alcohol. All the various points down here, including the £25 fee that is that from NNC, or are they from the solicitors, or where have they all come from?
Where have all what come from, sorry?
Well, these points for
It's-
alcohol, is it
and
standard?
I know the answer to it because this is where it's different from other forms that we issue.
Right,
So it's a fee to us.
so it's just the £25 fee is to us.
And normally for other forms, it's included in the tick boxes at the top, whether you want it.
Right.
Anyway, but carry on, yeah, so we need.
Well, they suggest alcohol can be sold in an event, it's been agreed with OTC, otherwise it is not permitted. But we've told them already there's a license for the consumption of alcohol, so how do we decide? On what grounds we make decisions about whether a £25 fee is agreed or not?
Yeah.
I don't know if we're happy with it like it is, but it just felt concerning. Point number 10.5. It's illegal to sell knowingly or allow anyone. The hirer must follow the Think 25 scheme. Do we check they follow the Think 25 scheme?
Do we what, sorry,
It
check?
says that the hirer must follow the Think 25
Yeah.
scheme. If we're saying that's a condition of hire, do we check that they're doing it? And if they don't do it, have they broken the conditions of hire?
But we
Again,
haven't had anybody that's had anything on there yet, have we?
No.
So, and we've not had anyone selling alcohol on the recreation ground either,
not
so.
yet. 10.6, can they sell in cans? Not permitted for people to buy bottles, but can they drink cans or?
Right, yeah.
10.7, again, it might just be my mind, but it seems to say that staff can't do drinking games, but is that okay for patrons to do drinking games, or is that what we're trying to ban? 10.8, hire to ensure that free potable water is provided at request where it's reasonably available. Who decides what's reasonably available? Is it the hirer? Because they're probably going to say it's not available. 10.9, item number 1 or I, can they only have half pints of beer or cider rather than pints? We get that by this reading. 10.11, sorry. Setting
I
about,
was smiling at the number of things you're bringing up.
yeah, setting of alcohol must finish, this is what happens when you look at contracts all the time.
Yeah.
Setting of alcohol must finish at 10:30, is that our law, the licensing law? Consumption must be finished by 11. 11.1, the Children Act 2006, does it exist? There's a Children Act 2004, there's a Childcare Act 2006, but I couldn't find a Children's Act 2006. And more importantly, who's liable if they don't? Are we liable, or are we passing liability to them? Point number 12, damage includes, so this is what we might talk about in the reg later on, or later on, but next time. Who checks? Do we check all those things and say we've signed it off, here's your £300 back, or do we just react if there's no complaints?
No, when Nobby and Tony go down to do the clear up and make sure it's all okay, they generally do a walkthrough.
Number 14, given our circus issues recently, the hirer is responsible for moving all posters, flyers, advertising the event. Is that just on the field or everywhere?
Everywhere.
But it doesn't
They're
say that,
told
does
in
it?
the
I
email.
assume. Okay. Is it worth just saying around town as well? And as I said, do we have the same terms on the rec? And I think lastly, be pleased to make point number 19. Please report any damage as soon as possible by email or whatever. Do we give anyone an emergency contact number? Or do we give them any emergency information? So if there's an accident on board, I know when we have accidents at school, the ambulance want what 3 words for the best location. Should we tell these people, you need to have an emergency plan in place, which comes back to that first question about the management plan. And if we can tell them what 3 words locations for pedestrian and vehicle access, that will save them a lot of problems.
Right, what I'm going to propose actually, because I had a number of concerns. I don't think it was quite as many as Ian has just articulated, and we thank him for that, for clearly going through the document in some detail. As I said before, there are 3 items on the agenda relating to Fletton Field. One is this document, the second is the bench, which hopefully is a lot easier, and the third is membership of the working group that we have between the Estates and the Fletton Field Association. What I'm going to propose is that this is clearly not a document that we're going to be able to resolve tonight. What I propose is that we actually move to elect members to that working group, and that this goes to that working group to come back with a more workable version. Because I think it's also appropriate that Fletton Field also see it before it goes any further. So, sorry, what I'd like to propose on this is that we essentially put it to the working group once we have agreed what the working group membership will consist of. I don't think there's any advantage in discussing it any further tonight. This clearly needs to be looked at in some detail. So what I'd like to do then is move to the working group. Previously, that working group has been served by me, Val, Jamie, and also Jerry, but I'm never quite sure whether Jerry is wearing technically a FFA hat or a town
They're
council
on
hat.
behalf of FFA,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, because he's not a member of the Estates Committee, but he clearly has been a councillor in the past. So we would normally expect there to be 3 councillors from this committee on that. I think Jamie is quite happy to continue. I don't want to make any assumption about Val.
Yes, I
You are happy to continue?
yes, I like
Okay.
point out this.
So I'm happy to nominate those two, but equally, if anybody else would wish to join that group, they are more than welcome. We are not restricted by numbers. Just so you know, before you ask the question, how often does it meet? It kind of meets almost as often as it's required to do so. We tend to meet about every 2 months on average. It's a useful group because it's quite clear that we do not want to, although we own the field, and at the end of the day, it's our responsibility and our decision about what happens with the field. It's only right that we acknowledge the work that the Flettonfield Association has done to get us this far. And at the end of the day, it's their group of volunteers that actually do most of the work. So this is about a partnership. And the working group has proved to be an effective way of getting that partnership working. So it's a very useful group.
I'm happy to be involved as well.
The only issue, we tend to meet about 6 o'clock, don't we? That's not an issue for you?
Usually on a Monday, it's
Yeah.
usually Monday at
Yeah.
6 o'clock.
He's here now.
It's usually okay.
Yeah.
Trying to manage some of the
Okay.
commitments I'm putting myself against, but I think I'm interested in making the best use of that space for all sorts of different residents. And I've not necessarily heard a variety of opinions aside from kind of conservation. So I'd love to know how that's going to be aligned. So yeah.
Okay. Right, so I think we have a proposal about membership. Assuming that I kind of think that Jamie indicated that he would be happy to continue. It was a long time since we've actually had a meeting of that group, but we talked about it, and I think Jamie would be happy to continue. So if we make the assumption that the proposal would be, as you've just heard.
Yeah.
Okay, all happy with that?
Yep.
Good. Sorry, I'm going to now log into my machine again. Now we can turn to our bench, where we have a proposal for this new bench.
I got prices for the ones that we've got everywhere else because they're nice and sturdy. I don't think they look particularly pretty, but they're 100% recycled and they're really sturdy, so.
I love that.
Do I have to be in black?
No, you can have them shop around.
Sorry?
This is black,
We don't like brand,
but
don't
they're quite ugly.
I'm just trying to find it.
And is this the company that you've had them installed before?
That
We
was
installed them,
recycled
but we
benches.
cut, we
Oh,
like.
okay, you installed them, you just buy.
It's now from Norway.
Okay, yeah, right.
And we've got one that we bought in 2003,
Okay, that's
and
good.
it looks the same as the.
Yeah, they don't fade or anything, do they? They are
No,
quite
it's
good.
Oh, I'm looking in the wrong place. I thought I had it open. It's a ping file. I was looking at the Word document. I know I've looked at it before. I thought, where's it disappeared to? Right, sorry, I was looking for a Word document. It's a ping file. Yes. This is obviously out of a separate budget anyway. It seems to me that we clearly need benches there. We've considered the kind of benches that we should have. I think the question, there's a view that having a recycled plastic bench would be perhaps more durable than a wooden bench. What do people think? We asked for a quote, we've now had a quote. As you can see, it's just under £1,500. Views, comments, John, then Ian.
I suppose my question is, we've had people offer to buy these. So I'm not sure it's a budget of the town councils that's being spent. But my question would be, if somebody's buying them, is there going to be a policy about what they can put on them? Is it going to be like Barnwell? Or are we going to say just OTC? What, before we approve it, we ought to have a policy on what's allowed to be done. And I don't see this committee tonight as being appropriate to draft a policy. I hate drafting by committee.
Well, that's the issue. I mean, when we were at the planting of the tree, we had an individual come up and ask about planting a tree for a ladder. So John and I were discussing it, and we were saying we've got to set the policy, because if you install one as a memorial bench for one person, again, it sets a precedent. And how are we going to decide? Yes, Val can install a bench, but Max can't. You know, and the same with trees. We need to have some sort of structure that we can advertise and say, this is what we do. And I just put the quote in there because obviously Fletton Field Association, I think, have got an Oundle Business Association have offered to fund ventures, and then individual people have offered to fund ventures. So we really need to know where we're going with it and what's the limit on it.
And I think it's also important that, as you say, we set a standard for the kind of bench that we want. I think it's also important that we have a sort of uniformity rather than lots of different kind of benches, particularly if it's then our job to maintain them thereafter. It may be very kind of OBA to donate a bench, but if we've then got to repair it, varnish it, whatever, clean it every year, then so be it. Ian?
There's lots of things. That's a full range of styles of benches and colours of benches they do. It's phenomenal. So they do children's benches, picnic tables, all sorts of stuff.
Rainbow benches.
Is that Kedo, or what we normally go?
Yeah, it's the same.
Is that, you know, we've been having them sort of plasticky. I mean, we've already got a benchmark bench, haven't we?
Yeah.
So let's stick with the benchmark bench that we've already
Well, these
got.
are all made of the same lead.
Yeah, exactly.
But they're different colours, etc.
We
The second thing is we've got a
we
lot of
don't
money.
need to reinvent the wheel, do we?
No.
We've got a lot of money that NNC gave us to spend on planning.
Yeah.
And the risk is if you don't spend it,
Yeah.
they might want it back. So I think actually we should make
spend
our
that.
decisions about the furniture we want to put on it. And then if people want to donate similar furniture in the future, that's great. But I've been involved in lots of these conversations around the place, people wanting to donate, and they're talking and on and on and on. We should probably make some decisions.
I agree, and I think we should just push on.
And then have a policy for extra stuff on top.
Can we take that as a proposal as such?
Do you want
Sorry, Liz.
just the colour?
Oh, the colour, yes.
If we're proposing to fund this, so we're proposing to fund this, is that what you're
Well,
saying?
we've got a big
Yeah, rather than have the donated benches.
Yeah, Rob?
Avoided this goes into sort of a strategic plan for the field, but it's one bench, you know. What's the vision for where it's two? So it's two. But is there a plan for where they will fit with future benches? Just conscious if we get these two and put them in a certain place, that then fixes what people are imagining to do with the field. Maybe that's a conversation another time.
There is already an implementation plan that shows locations and where benches are going to be. This is about filling in the jigsaw a bit.
Thank you, that's all.
So going back to Ian's proposal, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, should we say today that we think we should make available £1,500 for two benches, and then we decide in the next bill meeting?
We can, within our current budget, we can do two, as you say, because it's within the 3,000. So let's go with that. Yeah,
So I propose
so
that.
we've got a seconder, we got Val as a seconder, all of those in favour, thank you very much. Whew. Right, okay, right, we've crossed most of those off, although it says and tree planting. I'm not sure what the tree planting thing is. that we-
Same principle, if people come to us, we've got to have some sort of policy as to what we allow, how many we allow. So probably, we've only had a very loose request from this lady so far, but I guarantee we'll probably start getting more people saying that they want to do things like that.
Right, Ian's got his hand up first, and then John, sorry, John.
One of the answers, but let's not reinvent the wheel. Other councils have policies for tree planting ventures. I know, for example, Weymouth does, so that we can talk to somebody else, get a policy, bring it to this committee, rather than trying to from scratch.
Okay.
Would be my proposal.
And I would say at the moment, we've had 40 trees nearly planted. At the moment, let's just say at the moment, no trees until we've seen how they've grown, we see how they settle, and then we'll get a policy.
Absolutely.
Move on from there. But
I fully endorse that. We've got a lot of young trees in there. Let's let them mature somewhat before we start rushing ahead. And as Clyde mentioned last Thursday evening, just keeping those watered as it is, is a massive job.
I've been watering one stand already.
Yeah. So again, we've discussed it. You've heard that. I don't think we need a decision as such on that. So let's move on, please. Other OTC assets within the community, moth traps. Again, we've been asked to discuss recently purchased moth traps and request for them to be loaned.
Yeah, I've walked past these moth traps, I don't know how many times in the office and not really even noticed them, but then I've had a request from a resident saying that he's aware of them and he's been told that we will hire them out, or not, I don't know whether hire them out or loan them out for use on Flettonfield and down Snipe Meadow. I don't know what he's based that on, who he's heard that from.
Right. I know nothing about moth traps. Does anybody here?
I know a lot about moth traps. We've got 2 moth traps at the moment. One of them is at the primary school. Unfortunately, the battery charger is at primary school too. They went there last June and I've been trying to get them back ever since. And until we get the battery charger back, unless someone's got a battery charger, we can't charge the other one.
Right.
But I've told the nature recovery group, we've got them for the last 8 months. So I don't know who the resident is involved in the nature recovery group.
I don't know, he lives opposite the Drillhall car park, but I don't know. He's not, he certainly didn't say in his email that that's who he heard it from, so.
Yeah, so at the moment, there is a plan to use them on Flettonfield. And the idea was to let community groups like the primary school, Langston Junior School, that helps use them. But getting them back off the primary school is
Problematic.
proving to be problematic. We were actually going to do a raid. I didn't get it out.
Yeah, sorry, there's no question.
Well, it's not on this.
Yeah,
You're our moth trap monitor, are you?
I'm not, I know someone that is.
right.
So the idea is, the idea was simple. When Flettonfield was coming our way, moths, we have 2 people in Arundel who are moth experts.
Right.
They've got phenomenal records of the type of moths and the number of moths in Arundel. And they, as a recognition of the basic ecosystem, are a phenomenal indicator. So we talked about swifts and swallows and all that, male moths, etc. The Flettonfield, its location in the nature recovery corridor is fundamental. And the nature recovery group, when it started, wanted to start doing more counts, more surveys. So we got these 2 moth traps. We didn't know the Flettonfield. The primary school we came to use, and we lent them one. We got them back, and now we've got Flettonfield. We should start doing them ideally as soon as possible down here, and then encourage groups to try and use them in that nature recovery to see what the data is. At the moment, there are big trends with changes in street lighting, changes in building programs, etc., and weather patterns that are affecting the moth population, which will affect everything else. So that's the idea. We make them available.
So I'm conscious of time, so it seems to me that we have these things, it's a worthy thing if other people can use them. I don't see an objection why they shouldn't use them. You know,
If you tell the resident to email me.
yeah.
So you are,
Right, let's move on. So I think the next thing, if I've read this correctly, is compost bins under 1509. Discuss and suggest of compost bin sites on Fletton Field, the cemetery and St. Peter's. I'm actually going to suggest, given that we still have an awful lot on our agenda, is this something that is really that urgent?
No.
In which case then let's defer that till next month. Tree update to approve the cost to carry out 3 yearly tree surveys and risk assessment.
Again, this is something
Yeah.
that we have to have done, so.
£1,300,
It's,
it's brilliant.
yeah,
Choice.
Mm.
So I would propose that we do it.
so we're happy to approve that?
Seconder, please.
Yeah, okay. Right, let's move on. Updates on emergency works already carried out on dead trees. Discuss tree surgeon's advice about future works following this tree. Again,
A big branch had come down
it
and it
is,
was over the garden of the couple that are immediately next to this. So he cut the dangerous branch down, but instead it's dead. The tree's completely dead, so it needs to come out at some point. So that's his advice.
which tree is that?
It's let me find the thing. He says it's overhanging branch.
next to one that come close.
Yeah.
Right.
Some distance.
Oh, that'll be in the,
It's in that pot.
yeah, I know, yeah,
It's the people that asked to buy that bit of land, basically, but the one branch that they sent
Yeah.
pictures of was really hanging over their patio and needed to
Yeah.
come down. And he subsequently found the whole trees all rotten inside, so.
Okay, so given the liability issue with the council, I think we just simply accept the proposed cost. I'm happy to propose that. John, seconder, yes,
Yeah.
move on. St. Peter's Church, I don't think there's anything there, is there? Because we've just talking about compost later.
No.
Alnor Cemetery, ditto. Jones Strong. Now this is the accident. There's been various emails that certainly I have seen and John has seen to do with an very fortunate accident that happened there
17th
last week, whenever.
17th of May.
17th of May, bit further ago, where a lady unfortunately tripped over and broke her arm, I believe.
Yeah.
And I hope she's doing well. But it raises a whole sorts of issues. One is that some work needs to be carried out on the drain cover thingy. Do we have a quotation for that?
It's already been approved as emergency.
It's
work, so,
approved
yeah.
and stuff, of course, it's
Yeah, and
approved
just
as emergency,
update on
wasn't
it,
it?
because it's
You're
emergency.
absolutely right. So in terms of what we need to discuss, adding certain external areas to the maintenance weekly checks.
So
So
they
this
do
is
their
whether that
weekly
should
checks
be-
in various places, but obviously because the Jones Strong Centre is leased out to, we rely on them to report any damages or any things that need fixing. And obviously this didn't happen, although they did say that they were aware that they were loose and they had to be repositioned quite often. They never actually said, we think they need attention. So unless we had physically gone and done a check on the external bits and pieces.
Sorry, John, did you have your hand up? No. My personal view, I think, is a bit more complicated than that, because it seems to me that potentially it was done as a result of the premises being sublet for an event and somebody driving over it and creating additional damage.
Possibly.
No, I think they admitted that. They essentially admitted that, well, in the correspondence I saw, they said that somebody drove over it.
That's what the people that manage the building said.
So I think my concern is that whether this really should be added to a maintenance weekly check, because what I'm trying to say is that this is a property that we lease out. We should, as part of that leasing agreement, make sure that the maintenance checks we do are in accordance with that lease. Does that make sense? It's not like
so essentially, you're saying that really it shouldn't be up to us to check that. It should be up to the people that lease it.
It has to be in accordance with whatever the leasing agreement says to a certain extent.
You agreed. I think they had to give a list of who they sublet to, didn't they? Which we approved here. So who are we saying has the responsibility for that?
I think what Max is saying is, if you look at the lease,
Yeah.
the lease will give responsibility for maintenance of the building, maintenance of the grounds
Okay.
to somebody. So look at the lease.
Okay.
Who does the lease say has that responsibility? If it's us, we have to do it. If it's them, they should do it. They should have the liability insurance to cover it.
Because what I'm saying is that we've got to start with the lease, because the lease should determine what our responsibilities are, what their responsibilities are, and we need to work out the extent to which we are meeting those responsibilities. So that's my recommendation. Ian?
I'm looking at the lease here.
Is that a new one or the old one?
Well, I'm not sure, 2019?
Oh, yeah, there's a new one that's just being finalised, I think.
So this one refers to the exterior of the property, walls, fences, service media, roof foundations and structural walls, which we're responsible for. But the grounds don't seem to be mentioned in the quick check I've just had a look.
Oh, right, okay.
There might be a several point later.
It is worth having a look at the lease.
They're responsible for the internal building, but we're responsible for all the outside.
We are. But as I say, I'm rather conscious about the clock, and I'm also conscious that we're not going to resolve this without.
Yeah, I'll have a look at it.
So I think what we need to do, and this is not just the case with this property, if we go back to one of the very first agenda items, which were the terms of reference or whatever for this, leases are mentioned, on there very clearly. And I do think that we are going to have to look at the leases of most of our assets over the course of the year to ensure that they are fit for purpose. So, I'll discuss that with Lisa about making sure it gets onto a future agenda. So let's move on to the market, where we have this MOU document between ourselves and the school for the installation of the socket. We also noticed that the quote, which was approved, is now over this year's budget. So thanks to whoever drew this up. It seems to me, certainly at first glance, to be a very useful document. A much needed proposal. So do we have any comments? John, you've got your hand up.
I have two comments really. One very minor. Under clause 2, we don't have a clause 2.1, but we have a clause 2.2. So there's perhaps renumbering to be done there. But more importantly, OTC to check monthly users of electrical equipment. Who, when, how is that recorded? And do they have the qualifications, the ability to ensure it's electrically tested? In other words, it's easy to say, OTC to check, but who's going to do it? How will they monitor it? And what check will they do?
Which number are we looking?
2.2.
Yeah,
There's no 2.1. funny enough.
yeah,
So 2.2, ensure it's electrically tested. A, that doesn't mean we have to pack test it ourselves. They have to give a pack test document to whoever's in charge of the market. And with all cables, and we can nominate someone under the pack testing legislation to be our nominating person.
So if we do that would allow us annually to have that check that the electrical equipment is fine.
No, we get them to do the pack testing.
Yes.
Yep.
But,
We don't do that.
but somebody in the council, and there's probably going to be more, right?
Yep.
But is she aware that
yeah,
if this gets passed, she will have the responsibility to keep a register of PAT tested equipment so that she can check that the PAT tested equipment is being used? 1, 2, is she also aware that she has to make sure that cables are adequately protected when she goes down, because this would be a weekly thing, I think, and it's fine. I think the clause should be there, but I am concerned that quite often in documents like this, we say things, but then don't carry them out.
Emma and I have had this conversation because it is obviously going to be quite a time-consuming thing.
Yeah.
And the questions we had was, well, what happens when the nominated person for doing it is on holiday
So
or
somebody else
sick?
needs to be nominated.
If something gets missed,
So it strikes me as an admin point. It's not a reason to stop the agreement. I like the agreement. I know it needs to be renumbered, but my question is, will you and Emma as town clerk, deputy town clerk, ensure that we've got the processes in place to fulfil our obligations, particularly given it's the school? So subject to that caveat,
Yeah.
I think this is good enough to propose.
We are receiving this. Essentially, all we've got to do is we've discussed and approved next steps. I think there is concern that's been voiced, and I completely agree with that. We've got nothing against having a check of PAT testing, but it's a question of how practical that is in terms of how it's actually carried out. I think we just got to be absolutely clear. Yeah. I think what we're saying is that we can't sign this document as a council until we know that we can honour it.
okay.
Any other questions? Or we're not asked to approve it as such, we're asked to discuss it. So any other discussion items that people want to bring up, Ian?
All I would say is it's been backwards and forwards within the school a few times. The bursars approved it. It's now up to us to push this forward.
So do you want me to say, subject to the clerk, the town clerk being happy that we can manage
Yeah, I
this?
mean, as I say, we've got to,
Accept it.
clearly equipment has to be PAT tested.
Yeah.
And if we're signing this, we've got to have a policy in place that allows us to honour the agreement.
Yeah.
That's essentially
Well,
the
we've got
issue.
the equipment because we bought the.
I know, but
test and we've
it's
got a
about,
register and
it's
we've
about knowing that it's someone's job responsibility, knowing that there's cover for that when they're still sick, holiday, whatever. John, quickly then Ian, then I'm going to wrap it up.
Yes, so very, very quickly, we are not doing PAT testing. We're not responsible for that. Market traders should do the PAT testing.
Yeah.
I don't think we need a policy. I think we need a process. And my proposal is that subject to the clerk confirming, there is a process to ensure that we meet the clause 2 administrative requirements. I propose that this MOU is agreed and signed. I don't think this committee's got the capability of signing a legal agreement, but my proposal is that this committee recommends to full council next week it's signed and we move on. Subject to, by next week, the clerk confirming.
Yeah.
Process. That's my proposal.
Just to reiterate the thinking here, if you can scroll down to points 2.5, 6, 7 and 8, these are all administrative things. And all the school wants us to do is say, we know that every market trader who might use this point has got a £10 million or £5 million public liability insurance, and that we have seen pack testing documents. And that there's a quick visual check, it's using armoured cables. So it's not anything technical, we just need to prove we've done that. Hence point 2.8, a calendar of dates that approximate timings when the cycle will be in use. Effectively, there's a single sheet with, we've done the pack test, we've checked pack testing, tick. We've seen their PLI, tick. It's going to be used every Thursday, tick. But it could be used Christmas market soon as well.
So yeah, if it's a simple tick list that she takes down every time she's down there, then it's.
And also a list for every trader that they've got testing when it's done and diagnosed when it's. I'm not going to get to the operational side.
No, well, it's only going to be 2 sockets anyway, so it's not like we've got 20 stores to check or anything. So.
It should be straightforward.
Yeah.
Subject to that administrative process being in place, I propose this group, this committee recommends to full council next week, memorandum of understanding is signed.
So we don't need a proposal as such. I've been asked to discuss it. We've discussed it. We've suggested what the next steps are. I think you've got a gist of what our concerns are. We clearly want this to happen, and we clearly want it to be implemented as soon as possible, but it has to be a pragmatic solution. Okay, let's move on. Town events, I don't think there's anything there, nor on environmental floodwaters, street lights. We've discussed that already. And then we're on to energy, 2501 update, Ian. EV chargers, if any.
No, it just goes on there. No, same answer as I did the last
update on solar installation. Again, that's all waiting, and you've seen the scaffolding outside. We will hear more about.
Hello?
Has he been? He was going to come yesterday.
Tom?
Yeah.
He was here today. I didn't get a chance to talk to him and he didn't come in, so I assumed he didn't have anything to tell me, but yeah.
Right, we're now on to AOB, and we do have some quite a number of things on AOB that have already been brought to our attention. We have a proposed replacement of road and sports club signage. Given that this is under AOB, I'm not sure we can actually make a decision about it. It's just been brought to our attention.
We just said, so just to quickly fill in, I was approached a couple of weeks ago by 3 of the Occupation Road clubs. They said they'd like a newer sign that's lovelier and shinier. I said, thanks for asking, but there's nothing I can do about it. You need to put a proposal to the Estates Committee. The proposal came in yesterday. I said, sorry, we'll have to discuss.
So she's disappeared. All I would say is that I would like the proposal to come back, suggesting what they're going to contribute. I didn't see anything about what they're going to contribute here.
No, I think we can receive it next time, and then go back and talk about lots of things.
So any other things, Ian, you want to bring up on that? Because you have a
the only one is that one of our trees has started collapsing in the Rugby Club. It happens to be next to my house, but I've reported it to Lisa. And the marketplace, John was there as well, just to report a conversation that we officially overheard between Highways and Kia last week about the area of flags around the 2 trees. They're looking to do a flexi paved trial, which will be a porous substance that will help the trees and everyone will be happier. But that may not happen until October. They're going to come back to because of the tree's health. The tree officer doesn't want things done. So it was a good conversation with the conservation officer, tree officer, people from Lindsay and people from Kia Highways. There were 7 people, 4 of them wearing high vis, and John and I in the background looking like normal people briefly. Well, you weren't here. And the most important thing is that they're on it. There might be a couple of months of not ideal situation, but they're looking at a solution at the moment. The solution can't be put in place until later in the year due to the tree's health, but they're on it. And one of the things that might have to happen is that 2 of the benches in the marketplace might need to be moved away from one of the trees, which judged by the amount of pigeon droppings on them might be a good thing. And we need to start thinking over the next 6 months, maybe about where they might go elsewhere in the marketplace. Is that a fair summary?
It's a good summary. The only thing I would add is that funding has actually, I've asked this question specifically, funding has been secured.
Yeah.
So it's not an if, it's a
It's a
when. And so my question really is who's going to report that to full council next week as an FYI?
There isn't a full council.
Sorry?
There isn't a full council next week, is there? 17.
Whatever it is,
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks. So would you like that or shall I write that?
I won't be here.
I'll write it as part of the report then. Good. Yeah, I think it's a good summary. It was a good meeting.
Okay, any other stuff, right, I'm going back then, Rob, any other business?
Just something I'd like to have discussed through the year is a plan for funding for playgrounds, which we discussed in the previous kind of financial year. Most of the upgrades, which I think are needed, and we'll do this on the walk around the trip, are above the budget allocation that we currently have. Do we have to go through pulling down from reserves? It becomes a very kind of cumbersome process. It'd be good to have a plan in place as to how we might do that, so we're not wasting months going back and forth. One for another time.
Okay, Liz? Okay, thank you all then for, sorry, John.
We haven't got time, and I was too late to put it on the agenda. Councillors will remember one of the key things we've done in the last year is create a vision with some aims. And on the 7th of July, we have a meeting at which we're going to start thinking about what focus we'll have, what goals we might set ourselves, real, actual, practical goals over the next 3 or 4 years. This committee is one of the most important committees there is. We won't discuss it tonight because we don't have time, but at the next estates meeting, I would like it to be an agenda item that we discuss what specific items we want the rest of the council to consider as our focus as an estate committee and as a council for the next 4 years.
Okay, thank you for that. In which case, sorry?
And we had a note from, I can't remember his name, Lee Barron's psychic. There is a 3 million tree fund available for those who want new trees around. So I don't know, I think estates probably is an organisation through which that's announced. At the moment, no bids have been taken, but that fund will be open soon.
Good, in which case, I'm sorry it's been a very long meeting. The first meetings of a new term always are very problematic, partly because we have a very full agenda and we have other things that we need to get through. So hopefully in future we will have shorter meetings, but tonight was out of necessity.
Thanks, Max.
If I could borrow your pen, Liz, so I'm going to sign the minutes.